So, how do I sound? Too loud? No, it's okay. Good. Do you know what René Descartes is famous for? He's the one who said, I think, therefore I am. Very simple, right? And we talk about this all the time when we talk about affirmations. You know, we think we're beautiful, we end up looking beautiful. If we think we're smart, we are. Whatever we think we are, we are. But when you look at that at its more fundamental, basic level, I think, therefore I am means not I am beautiful, I'm smart, any of those things, just I am. The very thought of I amness comes because I think. If I couldn't think, I wouldn't even be, at least in human form, right? When in the medical profession, that's a decision for declaring a patient dead is brain death. Not when the heart stops beating, when the brain stops thinking. When we stop thinking, we no longer are. Think about how significant that is. Because I think, I am. And so extrapolate that. Everything I think affects what I am. So ever since Einstein came along with his wonderful theory of relativity and probability, we've been knowing that there's no clear-cut reality anymore. You know, what we think affects what we are. And I love, somebody referred to quantum physics earlier today. I love the bootstrap theory. I'm finally just starting to get what the bootstrap theory is. What the bootstrap theory does, it abandons the search for the smallest building particles. You know, Newtonian physics, that's all they've been doing. They've been dissecting things, taking them apart, trying to find out what they're made of. And finally, the bootstrap theory says they aren't made of anything. Because there is no thing. When you get down to it, you know, the smallest particles, the quarks, and then something smaller and something. There's always something smaller. And so the conclusion now is it isn't things, it's an interwoven, seamless web of events. Events, not things. So the things we think are things are actually events happening in our life. It's actually energy. So matter and energy are one and the same. And the properties of particles are determined by, listen to this, principles closely related to the methods of observation. What this means is that the basic structures of the material world are ultimately determined by the way we look at them. Now, this isn't just some airy-fairy New Age teacher stand up in here telling you. This is quantum physicists. You know, the most respected people in our society because they're the most logical, right? What we see is affected by our seeing it. So, scientists say that the increased use of the bootstrap approach opens up the unprecedented possibility of being forced to include the study of human consciousness explicitly in future theories of matter. We're making it up. As we go along, we're making it all up. So there are no ultimates, there's no inevitables, there's no absolutes. Everything is changeable. Everything, no matter how solid it may feel, is in a state of flux and change. And what's causing it to change is the way we're looking at it. So there was an engineer, see if I can get these straight, a theoretical physicist and an experimental physicist and a philosopher walking through the moors of Scotland. And in the distance they see, up on the hill, the profile of a black sheep. The engineer says, in Scotland, the sheep are black. The experimental physicist sort of says, well, some of them are black anyway. And then the theoretical physicist says, well, at least one of them is black. And the philosopher says, on one side anyway. You know, 4 realities got created there, and they were all right. Yes? So what did those guys do about that? And we do this all the time in our lives. We're all right because of what we experience. And so, you know, a lot of the time we get in a fight about that. And those guys could have gone to the Queen of Scotland you know, to tell them which one was right. And then they could have said the Queen of Scotland doesn't know what she's talking about, so we'll go to the King of Ireland. And then the next thing you know, Ireland and Scotland are at war. You know, that's how we do things. What they could have done is got together and talked about how each one of them perceives and how each one of them expresses. And the engineer could have said, well, I come from a background of observation and conclusion. That's what we do, engineers. What we see is real for us. So, you know, I'm sorry if I seem really dug in on that, but to me, that's what reality is. And the other guy said, oh, okay, that's the way you think. Eh? And the philosopher sort of says, well, you know, I've always been taught to consider every possibility, you know, and to not to jump to any conclusions. And the other say, oh, I never thought about that. And we talk it through, and we learn how other people think, and we learn how other people perceive, and we learn how other people communicate, and then we come to the common realization that we are all right. Woohoo! Isn't that easy? Easy to apply? We really, really like being right in our society, don't we? Anybody here who does not like being right? You know, we're almost addicted to it in our society. Everybody wants to be right. Of course we do. But then we have another thing that we do, especially in the West. I haven't lived in the East, but I suspect it's more so in the West. We think that in order for me to be right, I have to make you or somebody else wrong. You know? And then when we get an addiction to being right, our whole lives then become about making other people wrong. Instead of expanding our horizon, it's really, there is no right and wrong. There is no absolute. There is no ultimate. There's just pure potential. Pure potential, infinite potential, which we call God. And everything comes out of that. And that potential is sometimes called the everything nothing. Because it's nothingness until we create it into something. So reality is plastic and it's capable of being changed and molded all the time. And the way we do that is by the way we think about it, the way we create another reality. Somebody once said that the best way to forget all your troubles is to wear tight shoes. And isn't that true? Doesn't your attention all become about your painful feet and you forget everything else until somebody else fired? And then we put it in perspective, right? What have we got our focus on? When somebody yells fire, our feet still hurt. But we're not paying attention to that anymore. And when we do have all our attention on our sore feet, you know, the world is still going on. Dinner still needs to be cooked. Wars still need to be ended. But we've got all our attention on our sore feet. Or the opposite is true. You know, beautiful sunsets are there to be observed. Friends are waiting to be hugged. But we've got all our attention on our sore feet. And it works the other way too. When we have all our attention on something pleasurable, everything else disappears, right? Because we're creating our reality by what we have our attention on. And what we forget is that we always have the choice. At any minute, it doesn't matter what else is going on and who's doing what. We always have the choice whether to focus our attention on our sore feet or on the sunset. Always. Now, most of us have not yet reached that advanced understanding where we can instantly dismiss a reality that we've been carrying around for 40, 50 years, several generations maybe. It's so embedded in there that we think it's the truth. There's nothing I can do about it. That's just the way it is. There is nothing that is just the way it is, and there's nothing we can do about it. Nothing. Nothing. But a lot of the time we don't remember that, right? But it's practice. It's just plain practice, like when you practice to build your physical muscles, when you practice to play the piano. You need to practice seeing other realities, seeing other people's realities. No, we can't always just dump it, but we can kind of put it in the background. You know how it is when you're working on the computer, you're doing word processing and something else is downloading and something else is printing and some music's playing. And there's lots of stuff going on in the background. But which one will you focus on? Or it's like when you're watching TV. You're watching Channel 4 you decide to switch and watch Channel 8, Channel 4 doesn't go away. It's still always there as potential. All those channels, always there as potential. Which one do you want to focus on? You know, so my voice is starting to sound like Trudy. So we argue with ourselves. You know, that's our teaching in a nutshell, isn't it? What we focus on, we create. Change your thinking, change your life. We don't really need to say anything else, do we? But we argue with ourselves. We think it's hard. We have to struggle with it. We think it's a lifelong effort to make ourselves, you know, all that stuff. We have convinced ourselves that it's good to suffer. That it's good to worry and fret and fuss. That makes us good people, right? See how concerned we are? Oh, this is terrible, that's terrible. I'm such a good person. I want it to be different. You can do that if you want to, but that's not where your energy is best spent. You know, back in the 80s, they talked about the me decade, looking after number one. You know, that's what we're going to do. And now we like to think we're more open and loving. But there's a lot of preoccupation with self-care these days that kind of drives me crazy. Because some people think self-care is about just giving yourself everything you want and self-indulgence. I don't think that's what self-care is. I think self-care is making sure that you're in good working order to do what you need to do in the world. You know, because the reason for you to be looked after is so that you can look after somebody else. To me, our self-care isn't about me, it's about you. So, you know, the analogy of the airplane, we all know this, the stewardess comes on and says if the oxygen mask comes down, you put it on first, and then you help the babies and the old people, right? So the reason for looking after yourself first is so that you're in shape to be able to look after the others. They don't tell you put the oxygen mask on and then jump out of the plane and to hell with everybody else. You know, that's not it. The reason for looking after ourselves is because we've got a purpose in the world, and especially those of us who are here. Because we're the people who we're rising above just the physical pleasures and satisfying our needs and being right. We're here because we want to make a better world. We're here because we want connections. We want to reach out and get along with people and love each other and have a world that works for everybody. That's a big job that we're taking part in. So we need to look after ourselves. But that doesn't mean like spending all week in the spa so you get soft and useless, you know? Just something that gets me started. So, you've heard me talk about this before, watching the news, focusing on what's wrong in our world. You know, and a lot of well-meaning political activists and stuff, you know, I love the work they do, I honor and respect, but some of them can get really negative, can't they? Because it's all about telling us what's wrong in the world. And yes, there's a reason for looking at what's wrong in the world, because then we know what to correct. Same as there's a reason for looking at what's wrong in our thinking, then we know what to correct. But looking at what's wrong in the world doesn't do anything to fix what's wrong in the world, does it? Now, so my knowing how many terrible things went on in the world today doesn't change anything. Well, actually, it has the potential to change things. It has the potential to make more of those things happen. Because what we focus on, we're creating. Yes? Is that the way it works or not? So what I want to do is I want to create a new reality. I don't just turn away, I don't just bury my head and not pay attention to that, but I want to consciously create a new reality for myself. As much as possible, I want to create love, cooperation, compassion, forgiveness, understanding in my world. So that's the reality that I come from. Because that's the way I can affect change in the world. See, if I want the world to be at peace, if I want the world to be abundant, if I want the world, everyone to be loving, I have to have an experience for myself of what those things are, or how can I teach it? Right? So the reason for looking after ourselves is to create something so that we can give it away. So it's not irresponsible to be positive, to look on the bright side. It really isn't. It's the only way we can set an example that we can be the change we want to be in our world. So, we seldom see ourselves the way other people see us. Did you know that? Do you remember the first time you heard yourself on a tape recorder? And you said, oh my God, that's not my voice, right? But everybody else hears you a different way from you hear yourself. Guess what? They see you different too. And sometimes we see ourselves different. I remember one time getting all gussied up for a wedding, and my husband whistled, and my kids even said, gee, Mom, you look great. And I looked in the mirror, and all I could do was think about those ghastly rolls of cellulite that are hidden away under this gorgeous new dress, right? Anybody ever done that one? Or you can look in the mirror and you can say, hey, I do look all right. And that changes everything, right? It's like, not right. And it's only what? Perception. That's all. Nothing's changed. And the mirror is giving us back what we are. So we're always creating a new reality. We have to be conscious of that. But if we want to keep our creation moving up on the evolutionary scale, we not only have to be conscious that we're creating a new reality, we have to be responsive to what we've created. Right? And it's like this spiraling effect. We create it, we see it, we react to it, we recreate again. And like Walter Starkey talked in his book, it's not only what as above, so below, it's also as below, so above. You know, we're constantly taking step by step, spiraling hopefully upward. So you can create a new reality, or you can change your perception of the reality that's already there. You always have that choice. One thing you have to know is you can't do it by changing somebody else's perception of the reality. It always has to be yours. Darn. You can get your money back if you don't like that. So, a friend of mine, we were reading a newspaper article that was talking about stress, and they said symptoms of stress are impulse buying, driving fast, and what was the other? Eating too much. My friend said, stress? Hell, that's my idea of a perfect day. It's all perception. So we can have what we want. There's two ways to have what we want. Is we can go and get what we want, or we can want what we've got. One's a lot easier than the other sometimes. But in both cases, we end up with what we want to have. So, have you ever noticed how some people who come from a similar economic background to you, a similar history, you know, lots of things in common, but they see life really, really different than you do? And yeah, we've all got our story, and we've all got our childhood hurts, you know, and all that stuff, and it may be similar, but they respond in a totally different way than you. What is that? What is that? It's being in touch with the fact that we have choice. It's choice. Skinny people are kind of funny. Have you ever noticed that? I have a skinny friend who said to me the other day, sometimes I forget to eat. Sometimes I forget where I live. Sometimes I forget where I park my car, but I have never forgotten to eat. But that's a totally different reality from her. For me, it's just perception. You know, we can go into all that exploration about comfort foods and what is it we're really in. But people just look at things differently, and when they look at things differently, they experience things differently. So, and this is also true in our religious beliefs. You know, a religion is just a bunch of people who have agreed to look at things in the same way. And so they created a very large reality. One of my favorite writers is Bishop John Shelby Spong. He's an Episcopal or Anglican. I think it's Newark, New Jersey. He's a bit of a renegade Christian, but he is a Christian. And he wrote this a book, and it was a book at the time when there was a lot of discussion in the Christian community about changing sexual mores. Not just the gay and lesbian issue, it was about legalizing prostitution and all sorts of stuff. And he wrote this: if the Bible has nothing more than the letter of literalism to offer our understanding of human sexuality today, then I must say that I stand ready to reject the Bible in favor of something that is more human, more humane, more life-giving, and dare I say, more godlike. Isn't it nice to know that there are people in all faith traditions who are opening up, who are expanding, like the engineer and the physicist, who are willing to look at the way the other guys look at things. And of course, every religion too has its dug-in people. This is the way it is, and it ain't going to be any other way. He also said, I do believe, however, that there is a spirit beneath the letter that brings the Bible forward in time with integrity. That spirit must be sought with diligence. Without it, the Bible will not be for our times a source of life or a guide. So the spirit of it, this teaching that we call New Thought, it's been around in many, many forms, is the teaching of acceptance, of openness, of self-responsibility, of love. And it needs to come down through the ages and apply itself to the time in which we're living. You know, back in the 1950s, they used to call New Thought the religion for tomorrow. We finally woke up and said, hey, this is the religion for today. We are powerful beings. We have within ourselves, in our consciousness and in our perception, the ability to create life for ourselves. Jesus was a counterculture person, essentially. And I suggest that many of us are too, because we question. We question authority, we question the standard. I don't mean we have to challenge, but we question. We think for ourselves. And so we need to be always willing to change things. And the test for the change, whether it's a good change or not, is does it bring us closer to those goals of love and acceptance? Does it bring us closer to God? So we always need to be examining, checking ourselves out, saying, how am I responsible for my reaction to this? How did I perceive this? Do I have any addictions to like being right? Is there anybody that I'm unwilling to open up to listen to consider? Is there anybody I'm opinionated against? How can I change my world? Change your thinking. Change your life. Namaste.